Hey everyone, welcome back. This week, we're diving into something pretty cool, KOEIGO's programming course at Zion Christian School International.
Yeah, it's been a busy week for those kids. They've been doing some amazing things.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. Courses C and D and wrapping up Unit 3. That's a lot to cover.
And they are really starting to connect those early coding concepts, to the real world. Especially in game design, it's been really cool to see.
So we're talking about code.org, right? Can you give us like a quick overview for parents who might not be familiar with the platform?
Yeah, so code.org, it's really great at making computer science, accessible for kids. It's fun, it's engaging. And it's not just about like syntax and commands. It's really about building a foundation.
A foundation for what exactly?
For computational thinking. So
Right.
it's almost like learning a new language, but instead of words, they're using code.
Yeah, I like that.
Mm.
So like courses C and D, what kind of vocabulary are they learning in each?
Okay, so Course C, it really dives into event-driven programming.
Event-driven programming.
Yeah, so remember that game, Flappy Bird? They're actually building their own versions,
Oh, wow.
which teaches them how programs react to things happening in real time.
So it's not just about writing code, it's about understanding how it all interacts.
Exactly. And it goes beyond games. They're also exploring data visualization and even like the basics of binary code.
Binary code, it's like the language of computers, right?
It is. It's like they're peeking under the hood and seeing how technology works.
That's pretty impressive. And what about Course D? How does it build on all that?
Course D, it takes them deeper into the world of algorithms. Think of them as recipes for problem solving. They're learning about loops, which are ways to repeat instructions, and conditionals, those if-then statements that let programs make decisions.
Okay, so they're creating programs that are interactive and intelligent.
That's it. And all those unplugged activities they do, like graph paper programming, it really emphasizes teamwork and clear communication, which are essential for any coder.
And that actually reminds me, we see a lot of focus on collaboration in these courses.
Mm.
Why is that so important, especially when it comes to coding?
Yeah, coding might seem like, a solitary activity, but in the real world, it's all about teamwork. Developers are constantly working together, sharing ideas and really building on each other's strengths.
So these activities are helping them develop those skills early on.
Exactly. And it's invaluable for their future no matter what they end up doing.
It's about creating a sense of community and support, right?
Absolutely. It helps them develop a growth mindset. They realize it's okay to make mistakes, to learn from them, and to support each other along the way.
That's so important.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got those basic concepts down. Let's shift gears a bit and talk about Unit 3, interactive animations and games.
Ooh, this is where it gets really exciting. Unit 3 introduces Game Lab, and that's a platform where they can, bring their coding skills to life by creating animations in games. It's about making things move and react, even tell stories.
Wow, so they're really creating interactive worlds.
Exactly. And it all starts with a user-centered design approach. So, in the first lesson, they learn to think about who they're creating for. What would make the game fun for the player?
It's like they're considering the needs of others, even in the digital world.
That's a great way to put it. Empathy is essential, even in coding.
Absolutely. Now, Unit 3 covers a lot, right? What are some of the things that really stood out to you this week?
Okay, so one of the early lessons, it focuses on the coordinate plane, which you probably remember from math class.
Oh, yeah, X and Y coordinates and all that.
Exactly. They're learning how to translate those coordinates into visual elements on the screen, so it's almost like digital map making. But instead of marking locations, they're drawing shapes and creating images.
Okay, so they're bridging the gap between math and visual creativity.
Exactly. And then they get to bring those shapes to life. They learn to use code to control the size, the position, the color.
Oh, so they're becoming digital artists, using code as their paintbrush.
Love that. And then they dive into variables, which might sound intimidating, but they're really just containers for holding information.
Containers.
Yeah. Imagine labeled boxes in a storage unit. Each variable holds specific data that the program can access and use.
Okay, so it's all about organizing information in a way that the computer understands.
Precisely. And as they get comfortable with variables, they can create more dynamic and interactive experiences.
Wow, so they're taking those basic building blocks and creating something unique. What are some of the projects they're working on?
Well, one that always gets them excited is the Robot Faces project. They use shapes, variables, and even randomness to design these unique robot faces. It's amazing to see their personalities come through.
Oh, that's so cool. It's like a digital art class combined with coding.
Exactly. And then there's the Caption Scene Project, which is kind of a culmination of everything they've learned. They create a scene with sprites, text, animations, and even user input.
So, like, they're directing their own mini-movies.
You got it. And along the way, they're developing those problem-solving skills, learning to debug their code, and refining their creations based on feedback.
It's not just about getting it right the first time. It's about the process of learning and improving.
Exactly. That's where the real magic of coding comes in. It's turning those oops moments into aha moments, you know?
It's like building resilience and that I can figure this out attitude. Now, I know we've been focusing on Unit 3, but we should probably revisit those Course C and D documents too, right? What kind of interesting things did you find in there?
Yeah, one thing that really stood out to me was the emphasis on like real world applications, even in the early stages, you know?
Oh, interesting.
Like in Course C, they're not just learning about algorithms, in the abstract. They're actually applying them through activities, like creating a chase game, for instance.
Oh, cool.
And they're also getting a taste of game design by exploring concepts like scorekeeping and levels.
So it's about connecting those abstract ideas to something more tangible, something fun, something engaging.
Absolutely. And remember that the big event activity we talked about earlier, the Course C document, it highlights how that activity helps them understand event-driven programming. It's one thing to see code on a screen, but it's another to actually act it out.
Right, makes it more real.
Exactly. They're physical embodying those cause and effect relationships.
That's a really cool way to learn.
It is. And Course C also introduces them to Play Lab, which is another platform where they can experiment with game creation.
Yeah.
This hands-on experience, it's so valuable.
It's like learning a new language and then getting to write a poem with it.
I like that analogy. And speaking of challenges, Course C, it doesn't shy away from the importance of, persistence
Yeah.
and debugging.
Debugging, everyone's favorite.
Right. But those online puzzles, they're designed to push them to think critically, to troubleshoot when things don't go as planned.
It's such a valuable skill, not just for coding, but for life.
Exactly. And it's not just about fixing errors. It's about learning to approach challenges with a growth mindset, you know?
You know what else I noticed in the Course C document?
Hmm.
There's a section titled Explore S.Meanness. So it seems like they're also addressing digital citizenship and online safety.
Absolutely. That's a crucial aspect of any digital learning experience. I'm really glad they're integrating that into the curriculum.
Yeah, it's about creating a safe space for them to learn and explore.
Exactly. And parents, you play a vital role in reinforcing those messages at home. Those conversations about online safety, they're essential.
Open communication is key. Making sure they feel comfortable coming to you with any questions or concerns.
Now, shifting gears to Course D, I was really struck by how they introduce loops. Remember we talked about those being like shortcuts for repeating instructions?
Right.
Like telling the computer to do something 100 times without having to write the code 100 times. And the Course D document, it does a great job of illustrating this with activities, like the My Loopy Robotic Friends activity, where students, work together to write programs. They're using symbols to represent actions, and they discover how loops make things more efficient.
So they're streamlining their code.
Exactly. And the document also highlights how loops are used in creating animations in games. Imagine having to write the code for a character to move forward, like one step 100 times. A loop allows you to achieve that with just a few lines of code.
Wow, that's amazing.
It is. And they also dive into conditionals in Course D, which are those if-then statements that give programs the ability to make decisions.
Right, so the program can react differently based on what happens.
Exactly. They're exploring different types of conditionals, each with its own purpose.
So they're adding more tools to their coding toolkit.
Yes, and then they take it a step further with nested loops.
Nested loops, what are those?
Those are essentially loops within loops.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it can get complex, but it's incredibly powerful. Nested loops, they allow you to create those intricate patterns and sequences, and the Course D document provides some visual examples to help them understand.
So they're learning to think about code in a more, multi-layered way.
Precisely. And all of this leads up to those really exciting game design projects, where they get to apply all these skills.
Before we jump into the game design projects, I want to go back to Unit 3 for a minute. There are a couple more things I wanted to touch on from that document.
Okay, sounds good. What else caught your eye?
Well, I was really impressed with the emphasis on visual learning. They're not just reading about coding, they're seeing it come to life on the screen.
Yeah, for sure.
Like that lesson on the coordinate plane, it's a really clever way to make those math concepts more concrete and engaging.
Absolutely. And they're not just watching, they're actively interacting with those visual elements. Like in that activity where they have to tell their partner how to draw an image using only coordinates.
Right.
It's like a coding version of Pictionary. It's a great way to develop their spatial reasoning and communication skills.
Which are essential for any coder.
Exactly. And then the Unit 3 document, it walks us through the different elements of GameLab. It starts with drawing shapes using code.
Right.
So they're taking those coordinate skills and they're putting them into action.
So it's like they're learning a whole new visual vocabulary for coding.
Yes. And then they start playing around with variables, remembering to name them in a meaningful way, using them to store and manipulate data.
It's about organization, right?
Yeah.
Making sure everything has its place.
Exactly. And then they introduce randomness with random numbers, which makes things even more dynamic and unpredictable.
Randomness, that's where things get really interesting.
It is, and the document shows how random numbers can create variations in shapes, colors, even behaviors.
So they're learning to embrace the unexpected.
Exactly. And then there's that Robot Faces project,
Okay.
where they use shapes, variables, and randomness to design those unique faces.
It's like a digital art class, but with code.
Right. And the document emphasizes the design process, encouraging them to sketch out their ideas first.
Oh, that's important.
It is. It's about planning and visualization, which are key for any creative project.
So they're learning to think like designers, too.
Exactly. And then they add text elements. So now they can display messages, create labels, even tell stories.
It's like giving their creations a voice.
It is. And then we get to sprites, which are those dynamic objects that really bring animations and games to life.
Sprites, they're like the actors on the digital stage.
That's a perfect way to put it. And the document gives a great overview of sprite properties, things like position, size, and animation.
So they're learning to manipulate those properties, make them move, interact, even change their appearance.
Exactly. It's called sprite manipulation, and it's all about controlling those sprites in a dynamic way.
It's like they're puppeteers, but using code to control the strings.
I love that. And then they dive into the heart of animation with the draw loop, which creates the illusion of movement.
It's like a flip book, but with code instead of drawings.
Exactly. And the document gives examples of how to use the draw loop to create simple animations, like moving a dot across the screen or making a sprite bounce around.
So they're starting to understand how animation works, the
Yeah.
connection between code and movement.
They are. And then they take it a step further with sprite movement. They learn techniques like the counter pattern to control the movement.
So they're like choreographing the movements of their sprites.
Precisely. And then they add conditionals, those if-then statements, to make things more interactive.
So the program can respond to different situations.
Right. And the document explains how conditionals make those creations feel more alive and responsive.
It creates a more immersive experience for the user.
You got it. And they even learn about Boolean expressions, which are those true or false statements that control the program flow.
So they're making choices, like in a choose-your-own-adventure book.
Exactly. And then they explore keyboard input, so the user can control the sprites and actions.
It's like the user is part of the action now.
Precisely. And then we add mouse input, so the user can click, drag, and drop elements.
It's like reaching right into the digital world.
Exactly. And then they learn about sprite visibility. They can control whether a sprite is displayed or hidden.
Oh, cool. So they can make things appear and disappear.
Yep. And then comes that caption scene project where they bring all those skills together, the sprites, the text, the animation, and the user interaction.
It's like they're creating their own little interactive stories.
Exactly. And they're learning to think critically about their creations, thinking about how to make it more engaging for the user.
That user-centered design thinking, it's so important.
Absolutely. And then we dive into game design with collision detection. So that's the ability to detect when two sprites are touching.
Collision detection, that's like the foundation of so many games.
It is. They can make sprites bounce off each other, trigger game over screens, all sorts of cool stuff.
So they're creating those moments that make games exciting and unpredictable.
Precisely. And they even explore specific types of games, like side-scrollers and flyer games.
Wow, so they're learning about different game genres too.
They are. And then they move on to functions, which are those reusable blocks of code.
Oh, functions, right. Those are like the little helpers that make coding more efficient.
Exactly. And they learn about abstraction, which is the ability to simplify complex systems.
It's like cleaning up a messy room and putting everything in its place.
Perfect analogy. And then they dive into the actual game design process.
So they're learning how to plan and develop a game from start to finish.
Absolutely. They use project guides to help them stay organized and focused.
It's like having a roadmap for their game development journey.
Exactly. And they put all these skills to use in creating a project called Alien Jumper.
Oh, that sounds fun.
It is. The document breaks down the project and how they're using all these different techniques.
So they're getting a real-world experience of what it's like to create a game.
They are. And then finally, they get to create their own original game.
Wow. Their own game. That's incredible.
It is. The document provides them with resources and guidance to help them through it.
It's about empowering them to be creative and explore their ideas. It's amazing to see all these pieces coming together, the algorithms, the loops, the sprites.
I know, right? It's like they're starting to see the bigger picture. They're grasping the power of computational thinking.
And it's not just about memorizing commands, right? It's about applying logic and problem-solving skills to create something new.
Exactly. It's about using those skills to solve problems and build things in a creative way.
When we first started talking about algorithms, it all seemed a bit abstract to me. But now, seeing how it all connects to game design, it makes so much more sense.
Yeah, it's a great example of how those early activities, even the ones that seem simple, are setting them up for bigger challenges down the road.
So when they're coding a sprite to jump or making a character react to something, they're using algorithms without even realizing it.
That's right. They're becoming the architects of their own little digital worlds.
It's about giving them the tools and the confidence to build anything they can imagine.
Absolutely. And as they get more comfortable with algorithms, they can tackle those more open-ended projects, like the game design challenges.
Right, they can break down those big problems into smaller steps, just like they did with the robots and the cups.
Exactly. And we see that confidence reflected in their creativity, too. Yeah, think about those robot faces projects. They're not just following instructions, they're expressing themselves through code.
It's like they're discovering a new art form.
Exactly. And with the caption scene projects, they're not just creating visuals, they're creating whole experiences, stories, characters, interactions. It's all there.
It's about shifting from being a consumer of technology to becoming a creator.
And that's powerful. This whole deep dive has really shown how coding is about so much more than just technical skills. It's about creativity, critical thinking, collaboration, communication. Those are skills that will help them no matter what they do in life.
It's been amazing to see their growth, how excited they are to learn, and how they embrace the challenges.
I agree. It's a privilege to be a part of this journey with them.
And it's just the beginning. I can't wait to see what they create next as they keep exploring the world of coding. So, parents, keep those conversations going at home. Ask your kids about their projects. Celebrate their successes. Be there to support them when they get stuck.
And who knows, you might even learn a thing or two from them along the way.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. We'll be back next week with another deep dive into the world of KOEIGO's programming course.